What is the biggest downside tail risk at this point? We've talked about trade. We hear about concerns of slowing global growth, U.S. central bank independence, U.S. politics in 2020. Of all of these risk scenarios, what are we not pricing in?
Yeah, we would expect U.S. politics to be a red herring, mainly because the outcome of elections such as this historically have not had a meaningful impact on which direction the markets go, whether a Republican or a Democrat wins. In the last 50 years, it's been a wash. The risk that we want to highlight is twofold. If you look at the probability of a risk happening and the potential impact, worsening of U.S.-China trade has to be number one. And we expect through the end of the year something like 50% chance that we could get an escalation from current levels, although we may have some bout of optimism going into G20. But the risk that people are just becoming aware of, but we don't think is priced in, is a worsening of U.S.-Iran relations. We actually just raised our odds of military conflict with Iran up to 40% for the next year. Let me repeat that, 40%.
Wow.
So that's something that's clearly not priced in the oil markets, not priced into risk markets. Obviously, markets only get impacted if the supply of oil comes under threat in actuality or uncertainty rising.
Well, and as we talk about Iran risks, trade tensions, we fold that back into the markets. And if you want to come into my terminal here at GTV Go, we have a global gauge that measures interest rates. Global interest rates are all falling together. Is there a risk that central banks are all so dovish that bond price up, yield down are getting so toppy of things that we're not seeing in terms of these financial assets that we're creating bubbles?
Sure, and again, at Eurasia Group, we approach everything with politics first. And what worries us is the impact of the environment you just described on the reaction function of U.S. policymaking. If you think about it, in the last year, many of the people who typically would have been governors against rash action on foreign policy or trade or security side are now gone. Mattis, McMaster, Kelly, Tillerson, and the list goes on. So really, what is today the limitation, the constraint on the president to push further than markets expect and perhaps risk unintended consequences, be it in Iran, be it in China, Mexico, and European trade? The only constraint that we've seen work is the markets. And the environment you described, the S&P where it is, that worries us. That increases the appetite for risk taking.